Cause Before Symptom with your host, James Carner.
Tonight we're going to be talking about the twin pillars of the Second Temple, Boaz and Joaquin. Stick around. Welcome to Cause Before Symptom. I'm your host, James Carner. Tonight, we're going to be talking about the twin pillars right in front of the Second Temple that King Solomon built, whom had the instruction template from his father, King David. Now, in esoteric beliefs, Boaz and Joaquin, the twin pillars, have a lot of symbology and meaning behind it. And I thought tonight would be a good time to talk about those two, because I do believe that when they build the third temple, Boaz and Joaquin will be there right on the front, and you guys will know the significance behind it. Today is August 24th, 2024. Today is Saturday night. This is Cause Before Symptom. I'm your host, James Carner. Let's get into it. So the twin pillars of the Second Temple, I do not believe the twin pillars were on the First Temple. That's one thing to understand, that when the First Temple was built, it was the Holy of Holies. The Second Temple just wasn't as holy, because King Solomon didn't do what God said and married many of the women of the East, which God told him, don't do. Now, the women of the East had esoteric paganism beliefs. And the reason why God said, don't marry them, is because their religion will eventually mix with Judaism, which it did. So what is Boaz and Joaquin? Spelled B-O-A-Z. Joaquin spelled J-O-A-Q-U-I-N. Boaz and Joaquin. According to the Bible, Boaz and Joaquin were two copper, brass, or bronze pillars which stood on the porch of King Solomon's temple, the first temple in Jerusalem. Well, actually, it's the Second Temple, but the first temple built in Jerusalem. They are used as symbols in Freemasonry and sometimes in religious architecture. Two pillars. In fact, I saw in Trump's mansion the two pillars of Boaz and Joaquin. The pillars may be seen representing two out of three pillars of the tree of life, the Jewish mystical symbol for the creation of the universe. The names of the three pillars of the tree of life were often seen as strength and wisdom, with the third pillar being harmony, placed in between them. Thus, when a candidate passed between them, he or she, is essence, becomes harmony and enters a life in which the spiritual dominates the physical. 2 Chronicles 3:17, King Solomon erected the pillars in front of the temple, one on the south and one on the north. The one to the south he named Joaquin, and the one on the north he named Boaz. Columns representing Boaz and Jachin, or Joaquin, can be found in most Masonic lodges and are emblematic of their use in Masonic ritual. The pillars are a part of a symbolic use of Solomon's temple itself, but Solomon stole the pillars from esoteric occult history. The two columns, called the Pillars of Hercules, in ancient Greece stood at the gateway to the sphere of the enlightened. The frontispiece of Francis Bacon's New Atlantis, featuring the Pillars of Hercules as a gateway to the new world. According to occult lore, Atlantis is the civilization from which all Hermetic knowledge emerged. The rebirth of this lost kingdom has been the dream of mystery schools for centuries. So what that means is the third temple that they're getting ready to erect in Jerusalem, once Boaz and Joaquin get erected in front of the third temple, that's when the new Atlantis is born. No joke. So, in another way of looking at it, when the third temple is built and the two pillars are up in front of it, that is the return of the Watchers and the return of their children, the Nephilim. They are the Pillars of Hercules. It's the same thing. And it's the gateway to the New World Order. You see, the third temple is already built. It's just in pieces. It's been built for decades. The ceremonial outfits, like the breastplate with the, I believe, 9 or 12 different stones that symbolize certain ideas and philosophies. It also has to do with mathematical machinery and computational things, because I do believe that the temple itself is an old computer. The temple is where God and his Spirit, we could say the Holy Ghost, resided. Now, I often wonder if the Holy Ghost ever really resided in the second temple, because the second temple was adorned with paganistic traditions and ideas. But lest Jesus still would kick out the money changers, calling it his Father's house. But we can surely say that the second temple was taken over by the synagogue of Satan. The master builder of the Temple of Solomon was Hiram Abif, a prominent figure in Masonic ritual. The verses 1 Kings 6:1 through 38, 1 Kings chapter 7 and chapter 8 describe the dimensions, the construction, and the dedication to the temple under Solomon. One passage describes more specifically the twin pillars standing in front of King Solomon's temple. Now, we don't know if King David, who drew up the blueprints for the second temple, God told King David he is not to build it, but his son will. We don't know if King David drew the pillars in front of it. I don't think he did. But eventually, throughout history, something happened and they were added. And they are used against God. One passage describes more specifically the twin pillars standing in front of King Solomon's temple. But we don't know if this was written after the temple was built or if they were in the plans to begin with. The concept of using Boaz and Joaquin in the third temple is a very complex one with varying opinions and interpretations. So it is subjective because we weren't there. Those who advocate their use often argue that these pillars are symbolic of the divine presence and should be incorporated into the rebuilt temple. They believe that the pillars would serve as a physical manifestation of God's protection and guidance. However, there are also those who oppose the use of Boaz and Joaquin. Some argue that the original pillars were destroyed along with the second temple and cannot be replicated. Others contend that the focus of the third temple should be on spiritual renewal and connection with God rather than on physical artifacts. I would ultimately believe in that because the temple itself, we're told by Jesus, is the body. So it's religious figures, whether Judaism, paganism, or any other besides Christianity, they're the ones that want a temple with Joaquin or Boaz and Joaquin. And they want it to be used as a matter of faith and interpretation. It's very complex with no definitive answer because on both sides, in Israel itself, they're arguing whether to add them to it or not. Basically, rabbis and scholars are arguing back and forth whether they should be added. It's important to note that the construction of a third temple is a highly controversial topic. It has the East up in arms. It has significant political and religious implications. The issue of whether or not to incorporate Boaz and Joaquin into the temple is just one aspect of a much larger debate. But I believe that the devil uses the things of God and metamorphoses it and twists it into his own philosophies. Because the devil cannot create, he can only imitate or copy. The pillars of Hercules, which I believe are the exact same thing, just different times named different things, were two ancient landmarks located on opposite sides of the Strait of Gibraltar. At the western end of the Mediterranean Sea. They were believed to mark the boundary between the known world, Europe and Africa, and the unknown mythical lands beyond. One was the European pillar, which was located on the Iberian Peninsula in modern-day Spain. It was known as Calpe. The other was the African pillar, which was located on the African coast in modern-day Morocco. It was known as Abyla. These pillars were associated with the Greek hero Hercules, who was said to have placed them there as a monument to his 12th labor. They were also mentioned in the writings of ancient Greek and Roman authors who described them as towering, imposing structures. Today, the pillars of Hercules are no longer standing, but their legacy lives on in the Strait of Gibraltar, which is still considered a significant geographical feature. The pillars of Hercules represent several things. One, the boundary of the known world. They marked the westernmost edge of the Mediterranean Sea, which was considered the known world to ancient Greeks and Romans. Beyond these pillars lay the unknown and mythical lands like the Americas. It also is known for representing the triumph of Hercules. They were associated with the Greek hero who was said to have placed them there as a monument to his 12th labor. They symbolized his strength, courage, and ability to overcome challenges. It was also known as the passage to the unknown and seen as a gateway and a symbol of adventure and exploration and the desire to discover new lands and new cultures. And lastly, a symbol of hope for sailors and explorers, as the Pillars of Hercules represented a beacon, a reminder that even in the face of the unknown, there is always the possibility of discovery and adventure. So in a way, they offer wisdom and strength. This is what Hercules in the columns represent. Hercules, also known as Heracles or Hercules, I don't know, was a legendary Greek hero renowned for his extraordinary strength, courage, and completion of the 12 steps, or seemingly impossible 12 labors. We'll go over those. These labors, or things that he did, were imposed upon him by King Eurystheus as a punishment for killing his own children in a fit of madness. Here are the most famous labors: slaying the Nemean lion. This lion was invulnerable to weapons, so Hercules had to strangle it to death. Killing the Hydra. Now, this is interesting because Hollywood is using that word a lot. The Hydra is a multi-headed serpent that regenerated 2 heads for every one cut off. Hercules had to cauterize the stumps to prevent regeneration. There are rumors that there is a microscopic bug that lives in us all called the Hydra, and it causes all kinds of damage to the immune system. Another one that Hercules did was captured the Cernian hind, which is a swift deer with golden antlers and bronze hooves. Yeah, I don't believe that one. Another thing he did was he captured the Eurymanthian boar, which was a giant boar that terrorized the countryside. Hercules also cleaned the Augean stables, which was a massive stable that had not been cleaned in 30 years. Hercules diverted 2 rivers to clean the stables in a single day. Sounds like giants to me, doesn't it? Hercules also slayed the Stymphalian birds. They were ferocious birds with bronze claws and feathers that could pierce armor. He also captured the Cretan bull, which was a magnificent bull that terrorized the island of Crete. He also stole the mares of Diomedes, which were fierce man-eating horses. Sounds like all the stuff that was happening before the flood, if you ask me. He also obtained the girdle of Hippolyta, who was the queen of the Amazons. Now you can see where all of these comic book stories come from. Queen of the Amazon would be Wonder Woman. He also stole the golden apples of the Hesperides, which were guarded by a dragon. And he brought back Alcestis from the underworld, which was a woman who volunteered to die in place of her husband, Admetus. Now, these labors are just a few examples of Hercules' incredible feats, which have made him one of the most iconic and celebrated figures in Greek mythology. Boaz and Joaquin are located in Congress, the House Chamber, also known as the Hall of the House of Representatives, which is a large assembly room located in the center of the U.S. Capitol's South Wing. Members of the House of Representatives sit in unassigned armchairs arranged in a semicircle on tiered platforms that face the Speaker's rostrum. And behind the rostrum is a front piece with Ionic columns made of black Italian marble with white Alabama marble capitals. An American flag occupies the center, which is flanked by two bronze fasces. The bronze fasces in the U.S. House of Representatives chambers are called the lictors' fasces. They are symbols of the House's authority as part of Congress and hang behind the rostrum. I often wondered if this was a symbol or part of or has a connection to Boaz and Joachim. The fasces is a bundle of rods bound by a leather thong and a single bladed axe that originated in ancient Rome. Interesting, all roads lead to Rome. It was a symbol of power, strength, authority, justice, and union. My personal thoughts are, it's the same thing, just made out of different things. Both protection with the piece of the American flag in the middle of it. The Romans used the fasces in many ways, including carrying it in processions and having lictors or officers who served magistrates carry it to execute their sentences. Kind of like law and order. The fasces also represented the power of life or death that a Roman magistrate had over citizens. But are they Boaz and Joaquin? I found an interesting article by R.W. Robert Palazzo, whom is a Freemason, and he spoke during one of their secret meetings, and I found what he said. We're going to read this. And he talks about Boaz and Joachim, the two pillars that were in front of the second temple of King Solomon. The one thing about Freemasonry, which both attracts and repels, is Freemasonry's ostensible connection with all things esoteric. It has become both a blessing and a curse, which in itself is ironic, as the pillars are also said to have a dual purpose. They represent opposing forces, good and evil, duality. In the early days, the accusation against Freemasonry being esoteric is twofold. First, that its members engage in esoteric practices. Second, that the Masons engage in esoteric study. It was during this religious insurrection that Freemasonry was thought of as a heretical or satanic. When the word esoteric in its most simple term is translated into hidden from sight, certainly anything esoteric is not necessarily evil. Again, I'm reading from a Grandmaster Wizard at one of their lodges, explaining what Boaz and Joaquin represent to the Freemasons. Freemasonry came into its present from during the Age of Enlightenment, and its members were considered the free thinkers of their time. It has also been said that the fellow craft degree symbolizes the intellectual awakening of the candidate and his mature development as a thinker. You will also find that the Fellowcraft degree draws heavily upon the symbolism of Jewish mystical thought and on the symbols of alchemy. It was also during this age of enlightenment that several important symbols surfaced within the second section of the Fellowcraft degree, and none more important than the powerful and complex pillars of Boaz and Joaquin. To begin with, these pillars were either brass or bronze. In either case, they came from a combination of sun metal, that being copper, and moon metal, that being tin or zinc. This mixture of sun and moon expressed harmony and balance. Kind of like the yin and the yang, duality. Passing through these pillars represents a chance for a new beginning. I got to interject here. A chance for a new world order. George Bush, we sure got a chance at this new world order. 1,000 points of light. The fact that these pillars were hollow made an opportune vehicle to store one's baggage of the past, as the lodge does not regard or remember the faults of a novitiate prior to joining the lodge. In addition, the pillars may be seen representing 2 out of the 3 pillars of the tree of life, the Jewish mystical symbol for the creation of the universe. So that's interesting. They're saying that the tree of life represents creating yourself. If you get a hold of the tree of life, you can create your own universe. That's interesting. The names of the 3 pillars of the tree of life were often seen as strength and wisdom, and with the 3rd pillar being harmony placed in between them. Thus, when a candidate passed between them, he is in essence become harmony and enters a life in which the spiritual dominates the physical. 2 Chronicles 17 states, "Behold, and he raised up the pillars before the temple, one on the right hand and the other on the left, and called the name of that on the right Jo-Akin, and the one upon the left Boaz." That was King Solomon naming them. Since the dawn of civilization, 2 pillars have guarded the entrance of sacred and mysterious places, especially in Trump's home. He had the 2 pillars. Whether in art or architecture, twin pillars are archetypal symbols representing an important gateway or passage towards the unknown. If Trump was a true Christian, he would not have a gateway or passage to the unknown in his house. In Freemasonry, the pillars Boaz and Joaquin represent one of the Brotherhood's most recognizable symbols, and most times is prominently featured in Masonic art, documents, and buildings. The concept of the twin pillars standing at the gate of sacred places can be traced back to the ancient civilizations of antiquity. In ancient Greece, the Pillars of Hercules was the name applied to the promontories that flank the entrance to the Straits of Gibraltar. According to Plato's account, the lost realm of Atlantis was located beyond the Pillars of Hercules, in effect, placing them in the realm of the unknown. Tradition says the pillars bore the warning "Nec plus ultra," meaning nothing further beyond, and served as a warning to sailors and navigators to go no further. Symbolically speaking, going beyond the Pillars of Hercules meant leaving the foulness of this world into the realm of higher enlightenment. In Freemasonry, the Masonic usage of the terms Boaz and Joaquin originates from the biblical account of King Solomon's temple. The master builder of the temple was Hiram Abiff, a prominent figure in all our teachings, 1 Kings chapter 6, 7, and 8 describe the dimensions, construction, and dedication of the temple. One passage in particular specifically describes the twin pillars in front of Solomon's temple, and I quote, "For he cast 2 pillars of brass of 18 cubits high apiece, and a line of 12 cubits did compass either of them about. And he made 2 chapiters of molten brass and set upon the tops of the pillars. The height of the one chapiter was 5 cubits, and the height of the other chapiter was 5 cubits. The nets of checker work and wreaths of chain work for the chapiters, which were upon the top of the pillars, 7 for one chapiter and 7 for the other chapiter. And he made the pillars and 2 rows upon the one network to cover the chapiters that were upon the top with pomegranates. And so he did for another chapiter. And the lily work upon the top of the chapiters were of 4 cubits. And as the right pillar was set, he named it Jo-Akin. As he set up the left pillar, he named it Boaz. And so the work of the pillars was finished." I wanted to take a step back here and see if you recognize the checkered pattern that they put, or that King Solomon made them build onto Boaz and Joaquin. The checkered floor in Freemasonry symbolizes good and evil, and it also symbolizes a game of playing with people, controlling good and evil. It is duality, as just like the Great Pope does on a Grandmaster chessboard, using black pieces and white pieces, and telling the Black Pope and the White Pope what to do worldwide. Just keep that in mind. Whenever you see a checkered floor in movies, they are saying the Freemasons are here sponsoring this movie, and we are in control of duality on earth, meaning we are God, replacing the Most High. The account of Solomon's temple is of great importance to Freemasonry, as each detail of the building holds upon an important esoteric meaning. As mentioned before, the pillars act as a portal to the mysterious. According to the ancient rabbis, Solomon was an initiate of the mystery schools, and the temple in which he built was actually a house of initiation containing a mass of pagan, philosophic, and phallic emblems. The pomegranates, the palm-headed columns, the pillars before the door, coupled with the arrangement of the chambers and draperies, all indicate the temple to have been patterned after sanctuaries of Egypt and Atlantis. He further says, to quote Albert Pike had his own description, and I quote, "You entered the lodge between 2 columns. They represent the 2 which stood on the porch of the temple, one on each side of the great eastern gateway. These pillars of bronze were 4 fingers breadth in thickness, according to the most accurate account, 18 cubits in height, with a capital of 5 cubits high. The shaft of each was 4 cubits in diameter, a cubit being 1 foot, and 707/1000, or 707 to 1,000. That is, the shaft of each was a little over 30 feet 8 inches in height. 38 feet? Whew. The capital was a little over 8 feet 6 inches height. And the diameter of the shaft, 6 feet 10 inches. The capitals were enriched with pomegranates and of bronze, covered by bronze network, and ornamented with wreaths of bronze, and appear to have initiated the shape of the seed vessel of the lotus or Egyptian lily, a sacred symbol of the Hindus and Egyptians. Wow. Sure sounds like the Second Temple was satanic to me. Both these columns, as you may be aware, have a Hebrew translation from the Old Testament. The etymology can thus be explained. The word Jo-Akin in Hebrew was pronounced Ya-Kayan, meaning firm, upright, or stable. Boaz, on the other hand, is Boaz, meaning power or might. The one on the right means he shall establish, and the second, in it is strength. One thing you may not be aware of is that these columns were imitations created by Qumran and the Tyrian artist, and similar columns stood at the entrance of the famous temple of Malkarth in the city of Tyre. Another fact that may have slipped your notice unless your day is spent dealing in the occult is that the high priestess of the tarot, La Papessa, or the Popess, wearing her trirignan or papal tiara, sits between the pillars Boaz and Joaquin. As with most occult symbols, the twin pillars conceal multiple layers of meaning, some intended for the profane, others divulged in the higher degrees of Freemasonry. However viewed, the pillars, as stated earlier, represent the equilibrium of two opposing forces. Aside from their dimensions in York Rite Masonry, the pillars are most often seen with a ball or globe placed on top. Those are the ones that I saw in Trump's house. In essence, the pillars most likely had a bowl, one containing fire and the other water. The celestial globe or fire bowl surmounted Jo-Akin symbolized the divine man. The terrestrial globe or water bowl symbolized the earthly man. I personally believe it symbolizes the emergence of man and technology, meaning it's coming, that the fallen angels are going to mix iron with clay, given that it's brass and copper with water, because we're made of 95% water. And they're going to use fire to create robots. Just my interpretation. The pillars also connote the active and passive expressions of divine energy, the sun and the moon, day and night, good and bad, sulfur and salt. The door placed between them leads to the house of God. And standing at the gates of the sanctuary, they are reminded that Jehovah is both androgynous, both male and female. This isn't what I'm saying. This is what the Freemasons are saying. And an anthropomorphic, having human qualities, deity. The parallel columns also denote the zodiac signs of Cancer and Capricorn, which were formerly placed in the chamber of initiation to represent birth and death, the extremes of physical life. Freemasons know them to represent the summer and winter solstices, or more modern comparative appellation would be the two saints John. The twin pillars also showed up at the Kabbalistic temple of Solomon. In the Kabbalah, these pillars explained all the mysteries of antagonism, whether natural, political, or religious. They elucidate the procreative struggle between man and woman. According to the laws of nature, the woman must resist the man, and he must entice or overcome her. Such is the significance of the two pillars. They are distinct and separate, contrary in appearance. Separately, their power is one joint, and they would destroy one another. And for precisely the same reason, the spiritual power is weakened when it attempts to usurp the temporal, and the temporal becomes victim if it encroaches on the spiritual. Human equilibrium requires 2 feet. The world gravitates by 2 forces, and generations need 2 sexes. Well, I guess the Freemasons are convinced that there are 2 genders. When the 2 pillars find equilibrium, it is said to generate a 3rd pillar, one in the middle, which is esoterically representing man or mankind. It will also signify the union of Sushumna and the Kundalini. This sacred marriage will create and radiate throughout the human body, filling it with divine light. It is then that humanity will become the 3rd column, which is wisdom. I also think that Boaz and Joaquin also represent the creation of the Antichrist. And the Antichrist walking through it is the only thing that is worthy enough to sit in the temple. So it's a bastardized version of heaven, but in Satan's terms. So I don't think that, and I could be wrong, and I'm probably wrong, but I don't think that once the pillars are erected, anyone can just enter the 3rd temple. Only the Antichrist himself, whom is supposed to be wisdom, supposed to be enlightened, supposed to be what both pillars, or male and female, have created as an entity. In Kabbalistic teachings, the pillars represent the Sephiroth, which is the tree of life, and symbolize mercy and severity. Mercy, severity. When interpreted Kabbalistically, the name of the 2 pillars mean, in strength shall my house be established. Ah, whose house? Probably the devil's. In the splendor of mental and spiritual illumination, the high priest stood between the 2 pillars as a mute witness to the perfect virtue of equilibrium, that hypothetical point equidistant from all extremes. Thus, he personified the divine nature of man, the mysterious Pythagorean monad, in the presence of Duad. The column on the right, Jo-Akin, has its foundation on Chokmah, an outpouring wisdom of God. The 3 globes suspended from it are all masculine potencies. The column on the left, Boaz, has 3 globes suspended from it, which have feminine receptive potencies. It is acknowledged that the 3 pillars are ultimately united in Malkuth, in which all the powers of the superior worlds are manifested. The teachings of the Tree of Life are a very heady subject and hard to understand them. One must study intensely to understand their purpose. After Satan takes control in the 3rd temple, which is not even the real temple, the 3rd temple is our bodies, I'd be curious to find out if he decides to keep Boaz and Joaquin, because knowing Satan and how he works, he destroys everything. He destroys his, he destroys his cubs, his kids. And once he gets that physical part to be here in spirit and the physical, and reigns over mankind for the tribulation, it wouldn't surprise me if he broke down both pillars before he started his reign. Basically, setting it up energetically to get him to pass through, spiritually and physically, and then breaking it so that he can never leave. Just a thought. In pop culture, the pillars are sometimes used for other reasons. other than decorative and take on an esoteric meaning. The simple act of standing between or passing through them symbolically represents a transformation or initiation. This symbol is cleverly disguised and can be found in music, film, and literature, and in Trump's tower. One such place that can be found is in the first book of the Harry Potter series, where he first discovers he is a wizard. His initiation is visually portrayed on the cover as him going through the two pillars. One might not know that the original title for the book was Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone. The Philosopher's Stone being an ancient alchemical concept representing illumination. In the music world, rapper Kanye West stands in the middle of twin pillars in his highly symbolic video, Power. Among the plethora of esoteric symbols found in the 2009 fantasy film, The Imagination of Dr. Parnassus. The twin pillars adorn both sides of the stage as the leader of traveling theater group, having made a bet with the devil, takes them through a magical mirror to explore their imagination and present them with the choice of self-fulfillment or gratifying ignorance. Again, this is coming from a Freemason speaker in a Freemason lodge. It was a Grand Master, wizard, speaking to his congregation. In today's world, the two pillars stand in front of the IRS building in New Carrollton, Maryland. The IRS, being the most despised institution in America, constructed a state-of-the-art building, but it's not the building that gets all the attention. It's the odd work of art which profoundly guards the entrance. To most people, the art displayed means nothing, but to those versed in secret society symbolism, the implications are manifold and profound. Two black and white pillars made of the highest quality marble, denoting Masonic duality guard the gateway. They are topped by two hands pointing skyward, known as the hands of mystery. Between the two pillars is a dark pyramid with a metallic capstone on which is written, "We the People." In 1997 work is called Vox Populi, which is Latin for the voice of the people. As for why the symbol appears at the IRS, there is a basic and usually unsatisfactory meaning given to the masses, but additionally, pillars can also be found in the city of Astana, Kazakhstan, whose architecture and layout contain numerous occult elements. Guys, if you haven't studied Kazakhstan and studied why the movie Borat has brainwashed us into thinking Kazakhstan is a third world country, when in fact it's the next city that's awaiting the arrival of the fallen angels. And the architecture there is insane, including a river with what appears to be a machine that can create a portal. Very bizarre. Very bizarre. But this Freemason meeting, this guy is telling his people, it's pretty damn obvious that they are occultists. Even though in the beginning he said, boy, people sure call us occultists. And it's kind of a bad thing, but it's good, I guess. I don't know. Are we occultists? Nah, but we are. I mean, come on. To finish up, he says, very likely many of us have wondered from time to time what the true meaning of the pillars are and why the strange names, and just as easily dismissed the subject as one of the most inexplicable things handed down from the Bible from old times, which have no practical meaning in today's world. Nevertheless, these strange names are not without purpose. They contain the key to the entire Bible and to the whole order of nature. The meaning of Boaz is clearly seen in the book of Ruth. There, Boaz appears as the kinsman, exercising his right of preemption, so familiar to those versed in Oriental law. The right of preemption has for its purpose the maintenance of the family as a social unit, the right to purchase back property to return it to the family it once belonged. In the story, Boaz brings the alienated estate into the family not only as a matter of law, but because of his membership in the family, and his motive for doing so is his love for Ruth. So there should not be a reason why the name of Boaz is attached to the mysterious pillar when we seek its meaning. Thus, the two pillars typify unity and the redeeming power of love. St. Paul speaks of the unity of the Spirit, which is the bond of peace, and love, which is the bond of perfectness. It is also what St. Paul alludes to when he calls God the Father, from whom every family in heaven and on earth is named. These two pillars, therefore, stand for the great spiritual principles that are the basis of all life. Jo-Akin, typifying the unity resulting from being, and Boaz, typifying the unity resulting from love. Being and love. This dual unity we find is the key or evolution of spirit, and the reason that these two ancient pillars has been preserved in our scriptures. They contain infinite meanings, which appear to be most meaningless, but will be found to contain the most deepest in significance. More coming after this commercial.
If you're looking for a publication that delivers honest takes and critical insights into the issues of our day, then look no further than the Flame Paper. The Flame Paper is written for the people, by the people, who aren't afraid to challenge a mainstream narrative, be it healthcare, voter fraud, political correctness, or even the one world government. The Flame is full of timely articles, reports, and expert advice written by freedom-loving, truth-telling experts, journalists, and concerned citizens. To subscribe, go to theflameusa.com.
Shout out to Call Me, Amanda, Gertison, Claire, Bushido, Millwright, Graveyard. Guys, thank you for being here on a Saturday night, listening to the meaning behind Boaz and Joaquin, the two pillars that King Solomon erected in front of the Second Temple. Let's get into a deeper dive into the names Boaz and Joaquin and what gematria and occultism have to say about it. Well, gematria is a system of assigning numerical values to letters in various alphabets, often used in Jewish mysticism and other esoteric traditions. The numerical value of a word or phrase can be interpreted to reveal hidden meanings or connections. Occultism is a broad term encompassing various beliefs and practices related to supernatural or hidden phenomena, often involved mysticism, magic, or esoteric knowledge. What's going on, Edged? Gematria and Boaz. Well, in Hebrew, the numerical value totals to 85. An interpretation is it means strength and stability. The number 85 in Hebrew gematria can be associated with concepts of strength, stability, and foundation. This aligns with the meaning of the name Boaz, which means in him is strength. It also comes with wisdom and understanding. Some scholars have suggested that 85 is also connected to wisdom and understanding. This could tie into the overall theme of Solomon's temple as a place of divine wisdom and knowledge. Gematria and Jo-Akin comes to 91. The possible interpretation based on gematria is divine presence. The number 91 in Hebrew can be interpreted as representing the divine presence or the Shekinah, which we have heard in the Bible. This aligns with the idea that the pillars were symbols of God's protection and support for the temple and the people of Israel. It also The number 91 is associated with concepts of establishment, foundation, and stability. This connects with the meaning of the name Jo-Akin, which means he will establish. Now, in occult traditions, the pillars, Boaz and Joaquin, are often seen as representing the dualistic principles, as I've told you above, such as light and darkness, good and evil, or masculine and feminine. They may also be associated with the pillars of the tree of life in Kabbalah, which I mentioned above, representing the divine attributes of wisdom, understanding, and love. The tree of life is a central symbol to Kabbalah. And remember, Madonna is a Kabbalist, by the way. And it's often associated with the pillars of Boaz and Joaquin due to their shared symbolic significance. For example, they've got dualistic principles. Both the tree of life and the pillars represent dualistic principles. The tree of life is often depicted as a sephirot, or emanations, arranged in a tree-like structure, with the pillars representing the two central sephirot, or chakma, wisdom, and bana, or understanding. These sephirot as seen as the foundation of creation and the source of all divine attributes. And of course, foundation and support, right? Makes sense if you're a builder or a Freemason, you want to put in a foundation and support it. The pillars, like the roots of a tree, represent the foundation and support of the divine structure. Similarly, the tree of life is often depicted as rooted in the divine realm, providing stability and nourishment to the creation. Both the pillars and the tree of life are associated with divineness. The pillars are believed to represent the presence of God in the temple, while the tree of life is seen as a manifestation of the divine essence. However, the body's the temple and the Holy Ghost lives in us. So again, if you're going to get into Boaz and Joaquin and esoteric stuff and start worshiping God in a temple, you're a little too late. Jesus, he paid the atonement so all of that can go away. In essence, the tree of life and the pillar Boaz and Joaquin are interconnected symbols that represent divine foundation, structure, and presence. They are often studied together in Kabbalistic and occult traditions to gain a deeper understanding of the nature and reality of the divine. Now, the Talmud, which is the Bible of Kabbalism, or the Old Testament of Kabbalism, it does not explicitly mention the pillars Boaz and Joaquin by name. However, it does discuss the construction of Solomon's temple and the significance of its various elements. While the Talmud doesn't directly address the pillars, it does offer insights into the temple as a whole. For example, the Talmud often interprets the temple as a microcosm of the universe, which is various parts representing different aspects of divine creation and revelation. It's possible that the Talmudic rabbis would have understood the pillars within this broader context, recognizing their role as significant components of the temple's symbolism and spiritual meaning. However, without specific references to the pillars themselves, it's difficult to say definitively what the Talmud might have said about them. Duality seems to be the key here, in my opinion. Controlling good and evil, just as I've said about the Gray Pope and his role in controlling the White and Black Pope. The Gray Pope appears to take the position of King Solomon, who has the keys to control good and evil on earth by controlling the good angels and the bad. Anyone who enters the pillar is either a high priest or God himself, or God on earth. And doesn't the Bible say that when Satan sits in the third temple, he will declare himself God? He does. In the movie, Don't Look Up, do you guys remember this movie with drawing a blank here. Anyway, Don't Look Up. It's about a meteor coming to hit the earth. And during this movie, I'm trying to think of the names of the actors, but man, I can't. Because I don't worship them. I don't keep them in the back of my mind. Anyway, it was a popular movie, and it totally picked on the left and the right. It was quite funny. But Jennifer Lawrence was in it, and Jennifer Lawrence? Oh, my God. And then, what's his name? The Bachelor kid. Anyway, in the movie, the tech billionaire character played by Mark Rylance, he mentions the pillars of Boaz and Joaquin. The character's mention of the pillars of Boaz and Joaquin in Don't Look Up is likely a subtle reference to his wealth, power, and perceived wisdom. This guy, he was like the cell phone creator. Yeah, Jonah Hill was in it, thank you. So was Meryl Streep. And I can't believe I can't remember that guy's name. He was the Wolf of Wall Street. What's his name? Anyway, the kid he's a devil worshiper anyway. So here's a breakdown of why the reference might be significant. Because while I'm watching movies, I'm always looking for esoteric stuff. Always. I can't help it. It's just what I do. And when this guy, Leonardo DiCaprio, thank you very much. Oh my God. Leonardo. And Jennifer, it's not Jennifer Lawrence, it's Jennifer something. She was the girl on all of the Hunger Games. But that's a whole nother story. All right, so the references of Boaz and Jachin, or Joaquin. The pillars are associated with strength, stability, and knowledge in Freemasonry. More than likely, this character was a Freemason. The character, a tech billionaire, he was positioned as a powerful and influential figure. In fact, he was able to stop them from blowing up the meteor and use his own technology to mine it and steer it away and make money off of it, which didn't work. He was implying superiority by referencing these pillars. He may be subtly suggesting that he possesses the qualities associated with them. Strength, stability, wisdom. This could be a way to assert his authority and superiority over others. And counteract, yes, Jennifer Lawrence. I think it was Jennifer Lawrence, yeah. Counteracting the threat, the film's plot centers around a catastrophic comet approaching Earth. The character's reference to the pillars might be seen as a way to reassure himself and possibly others that despite the impending disaster, there are still foundations of strength and knowledge to rely on. Overall, the mention of the pillars served to reinforce the character's image as a powerful, influential, and perhaps even Masonic figure, contrasting with the chaos and uncertainty of the world around him. Now, Boaz and Jo-Akin have been mentioned in many movies. There was a movie called Ruth, which was a classical adaptation of the biblical book of Ruth, featuring Boaz as a central character. There was the Nativity Story in 2006, which was a film about the birth of Jesus, which might include references to Jo-Akin, Mary's father. So we find out that Jo-Akin is Mary's father and Boaz is Ruth's husband. And in the Da Vinci Code in 2006, while not explicitly about Freemasonry, the film explores secret societies and historical conspiracies which might involve the Masonic symbolism of Boaz and Jo-Akin. In the movie Angels and Demons in 2009, a Dan Brown novel adaptation that features the Illuminati, a secret society with Masonic connections that will and do worship the Pillars of Hercules. Another movie, Pan's Labyrinth, a fantasy film set in Spain during the Spanish Civil War. While it might not directly reference Boaz or Jo-Akin, it does have characters that are with similar names, and it explores themes that resonate with the historical context. Jesus' mother, Mary's father's name is Jo-Akin. So Mary's father, Jesus' mom, his name is Jo-Akin. Saint Jo-Akin is a figure in Christian tradition, particularly in Roman Catholicism, Eastern Orthodoxy, and Anglicanism. He is revered as the husband of Saint Anne and the father of Mary, the mother of Jesus Christ. While his story is not explicitly mentioned in the Bible, it has been developed in expanded upon in apocryphal texts, such as the Gospel of James. According to these accounts, Jo-Akin and Anne were a devout couple who longed for a child. After years of childlessness, they were blessed with a daughter, Mary, who was later chosen to be the mother of Jesus. Jo-Akin is often depicted as a righteous and pious man dedicated to his faith and his family. He is celebrated for his role in the lineage of Jesus Christ and is considered a patron saint of fathers and families. Now, it's important to note that while Jo-Akin is a revered figure in many Christian traditions, his story is primarily based on apocryphal texts and is not considered canonical scripture, meaning the Apocrypha books were taken out. So, Millwright is right. There are a whole list of Kabbalists and don't look up. Exactly. So I watch these movies and I look for esoteric meaning and trying to find out what are they trying to tell us and what's coming. Boaz is a prominent character in the book of Ruth in the Bible. He, Boaz, is a wealthy landowner in Bethlehem and a relative of Naomi's deceased husband. He was generous and very kind. Boaz was known for his adherence to the law, for his generosity, and demonstrated by his kindness to his wife, Ruth, who was a Moabite widow and the daughter-in-law of Naomi. He was a redeemer. Boaz acts as a redeemer for Ruth by marrying her and providing her with a new life. He was the ancestor of Jesus. Boaz is included in the genealogy of Jesus Christ in the Gospel of Matthew. Now, Boaz is often seen as a model of righteousness, compassion, and loyalty in the Bible. His story is a testament to God's faithfulness and provision for those in need. So now you've seen Boaz and Joaquin throughout what the occult say, what the Freemasons say, what Hollywood's trying to say, and what they really are in the Bible. And I believe that King Solomon, although with good intentions in his heart, in the beginning, created it with those two in mind, as Mary's father and Ruth's husband, as two stable people who, without them, none of us would be saved. That's the foundation of all. That's what I think was the meaning behind Boaz and Joaquin, but it got stolen from by Satan. In conclusion, those names were picked by King Solomon. His father, King David, was a giant slayer, a warmonger. He gave the blueprints to his son to build it because God told David he was not to build the second temple because, well, he was a war king and his hands had blood on them. The temple must be built in humility and with the two pillars in the front that symbolizes the understanding of good and evil. And anyone who enters must be clean of the world through righteousness and strength. Although it started out as a good symbol, it was corrupted over time by the occultists who use it now to control the world. I believe both pillars will be built in front of the third temple again and be used for controlling the world. Can you believe it? Oh,
if you're looking for a publication that delivers honest takes and critical insights into the issues of our day, then look no further than the Flame Paper. The Flame Paper is written for the people, by the people, who aren't afraid to challenge a mainstream narrative, be it healthcare, voter fraud, political correctness, or even the one world government. The Flame is full of timely articles, reports, and expert advice written by freedom-loving, truth-telling experts, journalists, and concerned citizens. To subscribe, go to theflameusa.com.
We created two 2 supplements. Their elite potion, I'm sure you've heard of it by now. All right? One is called the Whimsy Worm Washer, which kills parasites that allegedly cause cancer. And the other is the Nickel Nixer Elixir, which removes heavy metals, which cause, or is purportedly causes, dementia, Alzheimer's, autism. I created them to basically destroy all the crap that gets into your body from chemtrails and to destroy the parasites that poop and pee inside our bodies. Go to elitepotion.com and start to feel better. I've been on these for 2 months, and I'm telling you, my energy is back to that of a 30 and 40-year-old, not a 50-year-old, meaning I'm doing double the amount of work that I did in the past. I'm feeling better. My brain is feeling better. I'm not taking as long naps as I used to. I have more energy than I could ever imagine, and I know it's because of this, because I've been on this for a solid 2 months, and I feel great. And I do believe that this is something we're all going to have to take for the rest of our lives. Now, if you just can't afford ours, go look at the ingredients and buy them yourselves and take the stuff. I don't care. I just put it together so that you'd have an easier way of getting it every single month. We'll deliver it straight to your door, free shipping. Go to elitepotion.com and get rid of the chemtrails and get rid of the parasites that your stomach used to kill until we started taking crude oil as medicine. All right, guys, let's get into breaking news. Breaking news with your host, James Carner. You know, there's not really much to show here, and the reason why is because it's an election year and it's getting closer and closer to November. They're not going to do anything to screw up this election right now because all points to who is going to win. Now, we know that the Freemasons and the Orsinis and Breakspear families, they know who's going to win. But most people don't really understand this whole thing and the hierarchy that belongs to the evil that has been corrupting and destroying our earth ever since, well, the beginning of time. And as I go through the news, I'm not finding anything that just blows my mind other than the fact that the news media, ever since Bibi came to America, has stopped talking about the genocide that's happening in Gaza. And I personally think that's the biggest news of all time. Because there are, or were, 5.4 million people living in the Gaza Strip. And we know now that we were told by the middle of July, half of them would be dead. Now we're not getting any reports out of Gaza, which tells me that there are millions that are sleeping right now without food and water. And it's disgusting, it's disgraceful, it's inhumane, and shame on you, Israel, for you are a terrorist organization. You always have been. We know who you are. You were supported and bought by the Rothschilds, the bankers. And we know why. So that there could be a state that you could use to war after other countries to steal, kill, and destroy their resources. You want to use the name of God and his chosen people to do your dirty work. So Israel, you are evil. And I would agree with Iran when they said to wipe you off of the face of the earth. I agree. Now, I'm not a Iranian and I'm not a terrorist, and I have nothing to do with the ideologies of Islam, but I respect them, and I know that they are being terrorized by you, Israel. But you have cleverly used our media to throw that upside down. And most Americans think that the terrorists, whom are Hamas, are the bad guys that are using women and children as human shields to block themselves from getting hurt by Israel. But you see, Israel has a secret service. It has its own equivalent, if not better, than the Navy SEALs. They have the power to wipe out an army of 30,000, which that's all it is. Hamas is an army of 30,000 soldiers that are apparently scattered amongst Gaza and hiding in schools who don't care about the school getting blown up because so what? But if you don't think that Israel is committing these crimes against humanity, I feel sorry for you. Because your heart is in a dark place. You don't kill people and say that they were in front of the bad people. War is different now than it was post-World War II. You can declare war without anyone objecting, it seems, in America, Israel, heck, even in Ukraine. You can pick a fight with the biggest, baddest military, or second biggest, baddest military out there. And not even get completely shelled out just for profit. And that's another big story, is this phony war against Russia. What and why does Ukraine think they could ever or will ever win a war against a country that has nuclear weapons and Ukraine does not? It makes absolutely no sense other than it's just a money laundering scheme. Remember when we've talked about the New World Order and them trying to build it, they, especially when we read the Protocols of Zion, the learned elders of Zion, they said that they are not going to take territory anymore, but just continue with endless wars to siphon money out of all the countries. And isn't that what we're witnessing with the billions that America keeps sending to Ukraine in the name of democracy? So the war in Ukraine, I'm not seeing any headline news, are you? I'm not seeing anything. I can go to Google and type in news. No, not Nespresso. And it's, okay, well, Israel plane strike Hezbollah targets in Lebanon. But who cares about Lebanon? German police arrest suspect in stabbing rampage. Okay. Tropical storm Hone prompts warnings for the Hawaii Big Island. And of course, Trump, Brownstein, JFK Jr., or RFK Jr., Telegram app, but none of it is about Israel and genocide, and none of it is about Ukraine. Those are the top stories, still to this day. If I woke up in a world that I'd like to live in, I would turn to the news and it would say that the United States continues to money launder into Ukraine to fund their war-profiting companies because they lobbied and are getting special favors by Congress. That would be the greatest article ever. Thank you. Now we're being honest. And then another article that says, and Russia's in on it too. They're getting a cut. Because Russia has a bunch of ammunition that's been sitting there for 30 years that needs to be spent. They're just spending all the ammunition so they can create more. What we're witnessing worldwide is just wars to spend your ammunition so you can get the people to buy new stuff by voting it in. Millwright says Ukraine is a money laundering operation as well as a manufacturing center for adrenochrome. Well, I don't know about adrenochrome. I used to think that it was, but there still hasn't been enough evidence to support it for me to be behind it 100% saying that it is. It wouldn't surprise me because that's where the Khazarians lived. This is their land. This is, the beginning area of sacrificing babies to Baal and Molech. Wouldn't surprise me, but there just isn't enough evidence. There are rumors, but not enough evidence that they actually harvest adrenochrome. And that's why I also don't buy into Trump and the White Hats and, all of these tribunals coming, because Trump's not even talking about any of that shit. He's not talking about any of that. Trump is just talking about business as usual instead of talking about what we really need. Is he up there actually talking about gas prices and why they're so high, grocery prices and why they're so high, and what he's going to do to bring them down? Is he up there talking about the $35 trillion we're in debt and how he's going to get us below the fiscal cliff? Is he talking about that? No. They're both talking about vetoing a national abortion ban. Well, what does abortion have to do anything? Why is that so critical? Where a country, we're in debt and we can't pay back our debts. We should go under. And we're talking about abortion? That's the top stories of today? Or a stabbing rampage in Germany? Who gives a shit? People kill people. People will murder their own babies. It happens. It's happened since the dawn of time. There's other ways to give yourself an abortion. Women used to do it with high velocity water. With a garden hose, turned on full blast. It is not that critical of a situation to vote a person in. People kill people and cover it up. If a woman wants an abortion and you turned it all off everywhere, they'll freaking find a place. I understand the Democrat understanding of abortion. They're like, dude, why not just let them do it safer and not harm the person? And the Christians are, no, they're killing. Meanwhile, the Christians are the Christians are literally practicing sex magic by masturbating to their neighbors. They're hypocrites. God doesn't weigh sin on a scale. He doesn't look at abortion and look at masturbation and say, whoop, abortion's way deeper. That's a worse sin than that. No. Millwright says abortion provides adrenochrome. Well, it could. And yes, there are stories that have been caught in the media about harvesting parts. However, none of it has ever talked about adrenochrome. These are rumors, guys. I used to jump on the rumors and support it 100%. I now say it wouldn't surprise me, but there's no evidence to back that up. Is there human trafficking? There's a lot of evidence that human trafficking is real versus adrenochrome harvesting. The closest we got to getting any answers was Pizzagate, and that was covered up. And we do know that Pizzagate, a lot of these politicians were having sex with underage children and then murdering them to cover up the crime. And what they did with the bodies, we just don't know. You see, the Freemasons, they stick to secrecy, and it's that secrecy that doesn't help us get information out. But we cannot jump into rumors without having enough evidence to back it up. And there just isn't. Even though you want there to be. Now, you can talk about the evidence of Wayfair and how they had a dresser drawer named Julia that was made 6 years ago for $30,000. Yes, you could definitely say that there could be a case made about child trafficking through Wayfair. But I have not, on my side, seen any evidence other than just Satanists or ex-Satanists whom say they've seen it. And it's not enough evidence. It's evidence, but it's not enough. And that's what happens when you live in a fallen world where you have a Freemason lodge in every city, and every city controls, the Freemason lodge controls the sheriff, and the sheriff and the mayors are controlled, and the district attorneys are controlled, and all of them combined can easily cover this stuff up. Is it happening? I'm pretty sure it is. But there's not enough evidence yet. And I'm hoping there will be. In fact, that's what we need to pray for, is for these Satanists to get caught and the information to not be covered up. Like the Franklin cover-up. When the media hit that one, all of Washington were in a panic. And we need Washington to be in a panic every day from the wicked stuff that they practice. Milride says he's watched 2 covens do battle in his city. There are covens and there are evidence of covens. Absolutely. In fact, the cities with the most churches have more covens. It's just what it is. So I'm sorry to say there is not any more news out there that really would matter and make a difference in your pocketbook. But today you did find out about Boaz and Joaquin and what they are, what they represent from the occultist side to the Christianity point of view, and from a end times point of view and where that's going to go. Thank you so much, guys, for tuning in tonight on Cause Before Symptom. Tune in tomorrow night at 9 o'clock when God gives me another topic to talk about. God bless you all. Thank you, guys. You are awesome. Thank you for coming on a Saturday night, 31 of you. Thank you. I love you. Go to jamescarner.com and fill out my newsletter. It's the only way to get a hold of me and me get a hold of you. Go to elitepotion.com and buy my product. You will feel better, I promise. And if you can do one thing and just one thing only, love your neighbor. If you just love your neighbor, the world will be a better place. God bless. See you tomorrow.